Hi, my name's Chelle, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi,
Chelle.
As soon as she came up here and said my name, I immediately started to cry. So, I've known Austri for a really long time. So she's been a huge part of my life and a huge part of my recovery. My sobriety date is April 2nd, 1999. I have a home group. It's BWBBS, which meets both. It's what the heck does that stand for? Sorry, I'm menopausal.
Big book study.
Thank you. Broadview Women's Big Book Study, and we meet both on Zoom and in person now.
Nice.
Let's see. And I have a sponsor, and I sponsor. Okay, those bases are covered. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I'm going to try to not cry. We'll see what happens. Thank you. Tissue. I started drinking really young. I grew up in a drug house. It's not why I'm an alcoholic. It's simply where I come from. But I'm an alcoholic that did a whole lot of other stuff, a whole lot of other substances, and I came in with a whole lot of other issues. I can recall my first drink was when I was 3. I drank a whole bunch of beers, and I threw up in my aunt's boyfriend's car, and I remember her feeding me Starburst to like cover my breath so that my grandmother from Brazil wouldn't know that I was intoxicated, I loved alcohol. It was an absolute instant love affair. My mom's favorite drink was a screwdriver, and I was the bartender, so thus the screwdriver became my favorite drink. I would often, make all the drinks in the party, so one for her, one for me, one for her, and so on and so forth. I also loved that cough syrup. I was a sickly kid. No, it was before. It was Formula 44. Yeah, 44 something. Yeah, and I would crack it and take a swig and put it back. The first time I smoked marijuana, I was 8. It was not uncommon at parties to, on occasion, find me passed out in the closet with an empty bottle. I would often steal the pints or the fifths and polish them off for myself. And I will tell you that alcohol did for me what I absolutely could not do for myself, is it allowed me to survive that childhood. It was not an uncommon occurrence to come home with a guy on our roof with a shotgun talking about double dogs, we're coming to get you. My stepdad would go in and out of the penitentiary. He's the dad that raised me. And so I essentially was raised by hookers and cons. So it made for a very lively home environment. By the time I was 13, my best friend, her father was a Native guy who was also alcoholic, and we decided we were going to see how long we could stay drunk for. And we drank every single day for 2.5 years, So on my way to junior high, I would, pour in a fifth or a pint into the big gulp. I'd put a little bit of soda on top, and then I'd proceed to go on my way. The first time I freebased cocaine, I was 13, and so on and so forth. And on occasion, I would have run-ins with the law. I was a bit of a violent drunk, if you can imagine. We clean up good. But I was prone to violence. My first arrest was when I was 13. And the next one didn't happen until I was 16. 18. By that time, I was, taking handfuls of pills. I was taking half gallons to the head, smoking pot and just doing whatever I had to do to get what I needed to get, and, I decided at 18, or actually a little before then, that I wanted to run drugs for the Mexicans. So I did that. I was going to be a gangsta. And I was, fairly successful. Next thing you know, I'm delivering duffel bags of money. And, my life had started to, I started to have a few more run-ins with the police officers. It got to the point to where, they knew my name. I got pregnant and had my first kid at 18. And, I was able to stay dry for the majority of that pregnancy. I smoked a little pot in the beginning, but I decided that I was never going to do what my mom had done to me. I was never going to do that. I was going to do things different. After I had that baby, within, a month, a week, I was drinking again. And it was full on, full force. On occasion, I would have these violent outbursts where, I would destroy an apartment or, bust a 40 over a guy's head. I was not very well balanced. And I used to say that I drank because my nerves were bad, and there was truth to that. I really didn't know how to live in this world and be around the people in it, and so, my skills, for living life on life's terms were just non-existent. That baby number 1 was followed by baby number 2, baby number 3, and then baby number 4. And during that, I would have dry spells, where I definitely would not call it recovery because I was absolutely insane. I stabbed a guy 3 times in the stomach. I would sleep with a hammer. I threw a generator down a flight of stairs at a guy. I'm still dealing drugs. I was on probation. I got arrested and did my first inventory where, or the judge did it for me rather. He said, go to work, go to school, or go to prison. So I went to college. They were paying. And, I started to think to myself, I love my children. I don't want them to grow up like this. And there was always some sort of plan, how this time it's going to be different and here's how, and so, I thought, well, maybe I just need to stay away from the hard stuff, and so I went through my wine phase, I was arrested 7 times in 2 months for domestic violence. that did not work out. So then I tried marijuana, but that makes me thirsty. And thus the cycle begins, And so I started to have more frequent visits to various locked facilities. I did some, a few trips to the psych ward. I was going in and out of Pierce County Jail, King County once, Puyallup Jail. I just had an area, and I started to, I started even trying to go to church. So here I am. I've tried wine, just marijuana only. Therapy. I went to therapy. That did nothing. I learned lots of cool stuff, none of which I could apply. Pregnancy, like you name it. I was running all the stuff that we do to not drink, and I couldn't do it, and in the end, I had been released from either jail or treatment. It was hard to tell, back then. I had to piece where I lived by way of collection agency, and where my kids had gone to school, things like that. I just had no answers. And, they released me, and I had a little bit of time out before I had to go back in, and I moved into the house where my kids were staying. I had signed over temporary guardianship to my best running partner, the gal that I drank with. We were going to see how long. We've been running partners for years, and she was my best friend, and still I never told her everything, and I moved into that house, and I turned that house into a drug house. And I was standing in the kitchen. My oldest daughter was about 5 years old at the time. And I was telling her one more time how this time it's going to be different. And here's how, And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, "You're just a liar and I fucking hate you." And for the first time in my life, I heard the truth about me. Now it wasn't that I didn't mean all of those promises. My God, with every fiber of my being, I loved my children. With every beat of my heart, I loved my children. And I meant those promises when I made them. I'll be right back. But I couldn't suit up and show up. I didn't understand. And by that point, I had already been through 3 treatment centers and could not be treated for alcoholism, and, I did the only thing that I knew to do at that time is I turned around and I walked out on those kids and I left them there. And I didn't come back for a really long time, and I crawled into the spoon and into the bottle and anything else I could get my hands on. And it wasn't enough. It was not enough to kill the pain and the shame of what I had done to my children. I had my first suicide attempt at the age of 22, and I came to, cursing God, because I just didn't want no more. I was tired. I was tired of life. I didn't want no more. I didn't know how to get out. I had, and I just didn't understand. I really didn't understand, despite being exposed to Alcoholics Anonymous and all the rest. I just didn't understand. Even at one point I had walked from one end of Hilltop to the other, and I was going to turn myself in. I thought, okay, well, I got some time coming. I had a bunch of offenses that I hadn't shown up for, and failure to appears, blah, blah, blah. And the judge had said that there was a specific judge who had requested all my cases. And what she had said is that, if you don't do it this time, then you're going to get 90 days for every violation. And I had at least 7. So I was like, well, I'll turn myself into jail. I'll get some sober time. And then, this time it's going to be different. And here's how. And so I walked from one end of Tacoma to the other end through the hilltop, and I rang the buzzer on the Pierce County Jail, and I turned myself in. And I ran into a girl in the holding cell, and we ate some pills, and in a day or so later, I was standing in front of the judge, and it was a different judge, and he said these magic words, "What are you going to do if I let you out?" And, like a freeway through my mind, in less than 30 seconds, I had completely manufactured a story about how I had a bed date and my kids were going to come there and blah, blah, blah. And in my mind, I'm saying, no, that's not what's supposed to happen here. That's not how this is supposed to work. You're supposed to do this and that. And, but that's not what happened. I told the lie, they let me go. And I went to the corner store and got a 40 ounce and went on the next run. I ended up moving into a meth lab that eventually they kicked me out of because they said I was scaring them. You've reached an all-time low when. And what they failed to understand is I had been doing this for years, eating handfuls of pills and doing massive amounts of stuff that would have killed your normal person, but for whatever reason, I just was not dying fast enough. And so I'll tell you that I was sitting in a 68 Camaro with a trick and a 40 and a pipe. And I said my first unconditional prayer to God. Now I have a belief that a person can only drink and use for so long before they cross some imaginary line where they just don't come back. And the reason how I know that is because I've watched it. I've watched it my whole entire life. I watched it happen to my mom, my aunties, my stepdad, just thousands, that had passed through. And I knew that was happening to me. I could no longer tell the difference between what was real and what was not. And I said my first unconditional prayer to God that was help, and I sat there for a few fleeting moments, as sober as I stand here today, just that few brief moments of clarity where I knew that all the rules I had ever lived my life by, all the decisions and plans that I had made, and all my belief systems and all of it were all bullshit, and there was that I couldn't promote my way out of a paper bag if my life depended on it, and I couldn't protect myself and I couldn't protect those kids, and I'd love to tell you that was my last drink or drug, but it wasn't. Because I'm the type of alcoholic that has to be locked up in order to not. I need that period of abstinence, So I landed in at Pierce County Alliance one more time. They were the evaluators, and this wonderful lady by the name of Magdalena, who had done my evaluation a few years before, they moved me out of the waiting room and put me in a room by myself because I was having ongoing conversations with people that weren't there. And, I was dirty and just scary looking. And they sent me, she said, "Can you be ready to go tomorrow?" They were going to send me to treatment one more time. And I knew in my heart, that this time is no different than any of the rest. To this day, I know that this recovery is not different. I had that gift of desperation and of brokenness. Mm-hmm. I wanted to stay sober long enough to get those kids out of where I had left them, because I was getting reports back about, the abuse, and that my youngest daughter was urinating on herself, and, the people going in and out. And I just couldn't live with that. I had done the one thing that I said I wouldn't do. and those kids were living my childhood, and I couldn't stomach that. And so I said, okay, I'll be there. I said, but can you pin the directions to my jacket? Because if they go in my pocket, it could take a few days, because I'd spent 3 days in my pockets, and so I went to that next treatment center. And when they released me 90 days later, when I read my release papers, the counselor had wrote on my report to the courts, 0 chance of recovery. That was the percentage that they gave me, not a chance in hell. And she was right. And I knew it. I knew it. My fate was sealed. I would end up going back, and I was 100% certain of that, but while I was in there, this beautiful red-haired lady and her husband, they were taking meetings on an H&I panel, hospitals and institutions. And, she said things like, you don't ever have to drink again, even if you want to. And I still wanted to, and they scooped me up while I was still in there, and they started taking me to meetings on the outside. They took me to Fremont, which I knew I belonged there. The voices out there were louder than the voices in here, and I could sit and be at peace. But they did something else for me is they took me to other meetings. They took me to this meeting called Doctor's Choice in Renton, where there were like these professionals, and I still had like the jailhouse strut. I had tall hair and freaking flannels and baggy jeans, and, I was a tough chick, and every other word was the F word, like I was, like, why would they bring me here? And, but they told me to listen for the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I did that, and what I discovered is that those doctors, nurses, accountants, there was a police officer, a judge, like they were speaking with their mouth how I felt on the inside. And the magic began to happen, and little by little, they began, my sponsor began to spoon feed me this new way to live based on spiritual principles. She would say stuff that seemed crazy to me. She would say, he's paid his ransom, set your hostage free. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. Get a job. She would say, create the fellowship that you desire. She made me responsible for my own recovery. She made me branch out and do all the things that I didn't want to do. Now I have had the awesome opportunity to work with 3 amazing women, 3 separate sponsors that they were vital to my recovery, but also the strong group of women that I've surrounded myself with. The one when a lot of that trauma stuff started coming up for me, and I thought I was going crazy at year 5, and my friend Terry Wells talked me off the ledge. I was forced into therapy by way of circumstance, because at 2 years of recovery, I came home with those 4 little kids that eventually came home. I mean, I turned them over to the power of the state. The state gave them back, and, it took time for that stuff to happen, and at 2.5 years, I had come home, and I don't even know what the heck was going on that day, but I destroyed everything in my bedroom. I knocked over dressers, cleared everything, just like was in a full-on rage, not for any particular reason. And I turned around, and those 4 little kids were staring at me, and they were terrified, and I knew something else had to be done. It was time to do some deeper work. I had problems other than alcoholism that needed to be addressed because it was affecting my ability to show up in a capacity that they needed. Those kids had been damaged, and so I went into therapy and I took parenting classes for how to parent kids who had been damaged. And I will tell you that those same 4 kids that hated me love and respect me today.
Cool.
I grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've had the wonderful opportunity to suit up and show up in a capacity that I did not know I was capable of. If you would have told me at year 1, year 2, year 5 even, that I'd be living the life that I'm living today, I'd say you're a damn liar, because I didn't believe that's fine for you people, but my case is different, and what you guys did for me is that you taught me that my case is not different. You speak with your mouths what I think in here and in here. And then I can, show up in a different way. You've led me down a path that has allowed me. I went back to school, got my education. I got married. I got married to a guy I met in the dollar store. We're still married. I want to tell you a little bit. I just got back from Chicago mid last week. My youngest daughter finished her master's degree, and she lives in Chicago, and she's been with the same guy for like 12 years, and he proposed in the Gardens of Versailles. And so we went to Chicago, and we went wedding dress shopping.
Cool.
And in 2024 we're going to go and she's going to get married in Italy. I have another daughter who, she has a degree in fashion and pattern making. She lives in Houston. I have another daughter who went to Johns Hopkins on scholarship, and she lives in Baltimore. She stayed there. And I will tell you that my youngest son lives here in Seattle. And just to keep it real, he's been booted out of Tent City twice. And, I talked to him before I left. And, that kid is, they're all my heart. They're all my heart and soul, But I will tell you that the last couple times I've talked to him, he was not able to clearly speak because he's using and drinking so hard.
Ouch.
And when I hang up the phone with him, it feels as if someone's standing on my chest, and there have been times when it was freezing and it was snowing, and I hunted him down on the streets of Seattle because I still got skills to find people. And I told him to get in the car, and I paired him with a program, but he's got his own story, and I understand from the perspective of a person who's in recovery, working with people who aren't ready. When you're working with somebody who's new and they're just not ready, they're not ready to do the work that we do, that level of he does not have the gift of desperation yet. And it's hard to watch. I watched my mom die from this disease. She was one of those who was constitutionally incapable of being honest. I watched my stepdad die from this disease. He was constitutionally incapable of being honest, and there's a part of me that doesn't believe my son will make it. And that's hard, there's times that I want to take matters into my own hands and be that girl again, but that's not how I live today. Today I live with healthy boundaries, and I let him know what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. I send him resources, and I send him local meetings that are where he's at right now. And I let go of the rest because it's his story, not mine. And what I know about my alcoholism is there was no amount of love, pleading, ass whoopings, any of the rest that would have changed what happened. I needed to, I was beyond human aid, and that's where he's at. But there was this thing that Austri read, or it was another lady. Sorry, I forget who it was. Somebody read it in the beginning where it talked about for all the people who are yet to come, and I'm so very thankful that this program exists for even a punk kid like me. You guys took a punk kid and you turned her into a fairly decent lady. How the hell did that happen? Like, it's crazy. And so, there's that, the responsibility statements, talks about whenever there's someone in need, the hand of AA, we want it to always be there. So I love and respect the traditions. I've just gotten, I'm getting back into the rotation to start doing King County jails again. Yeah, and so I love my ladies, and I love this program. You guys have done for me what I absolutely could not do for myself. Not only did you save me, but you saved the lives of my kids. And I could never repay what you guys have done. So I just want to thank you for being here. I think I'm pretty much close to done. So I want to say welcome if you're new, and happy birthday if you're having a birthday. And I'll just say this sure beats sitting in a cell. Thanks.